Welcome to Writer Talks, where you get to meet the authors of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, who are published in our international anthologies of short stories because they won our monthly contests. With me tonight, live from Seattle, Washington, is Anthony Johnson. He wrote a story called Blind Oasis in our magical realism category, and it is mind blowing. So I can't wait to talk to Anthony here. He actually is has an MFA, a Master's in Fine Arts from the University of Washington, and he's joining us live from Seattle. Welcome, Anthony.
Hello, how are you?
I'm excellent. Super excited to talk to you because I love talking about writing with writers. And you just told me something amazing. You just finished your first novel. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was definitely a task, but I put my pandemic time to good use this year. So
Perfect. Quarantine and write. Hashtag that, right? Awesome. Okay, so please, what's the genre? What's it about? What's the title? Or are you being secretive about it?
it's actually the title is called The Tellerist and the White Dragon. It's a young adult kind of fantasy sort of thing. Um, I am a huge fan of Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea books, so I
Per-
kind of a unabashed you know ode to her work. So I'm excited about it.
Very cool. So you said writing during the pandemic. You have a day job. So how did you do that? How did you write a novel with a day job during the pandemic?
It's pretty difficult, like working like a 9 to 5 and then like sitting at the same desk every day and then like taking a little break and then okay, now it's time to write and do my own work again. It was hard to like switch gears, I guess.
Mhm.
So the trick that I use is I would just go for a walk, and I've done so much walking this year because of the pandemic, and it's really helped my writing and helped me like, plot things out, think about character motivations and whatnot. So
Do you remember what your thought while you're walking, or do you have to write it down?
uh I use my iPhone. It's so great. Like I'll be like walking around the trail typing, so I'll have
What?
to stop and do it. So
I hope there's no bears.
no, thankfully not. Thankfully not. Just irate walkers, I guess.
Oh, okay. Okay, so walking helps you and it also shifts you into your imagination, right? Your creativity starts to flow and then you go right after that.
Yeah, I try to write for an hour or two, at least twice a week
Uh-huh.
during weekdays. So
Okay, so you'd work during the day and then you do the walk and then write in the evening.
yes.
Okay, okay. That's really great advice because I remember when I was working at the health department, I would get up at like 4 a.m. to write. I was writing a screenplay and I was so determined. So that was the only time I could do it because I had a son at home. He's grown now, but it was just like, I have to get this writing. And so talk about the urgency to get it done.
For me, it's like if I go for an extended amount of time without writing, I it's like my brain just falls into disrepair, and I just feel like something's like holding me back. And but whenever I flex those creative muscles, like I do the bulk of my writing on the weekends,
Hmm.
and whenever I like flex those creative muscles, I just feel like I have more purpose and more of a goal in my life, and
Hmm.
it's just really good for my mental health, I guess. So
Oh my goodness, that's so true. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So can you talk about the flow when you're in it? Like, do you just like lose all track of time and you look up in the sunset and you just forgot to eat and all that?
sometimes that really does happen to me, not as much as I would like. Um, Sometimes I'll just get completely lost in my narrative, and like 2 or 3 hours will go by, and I've written all these pages, but a lot of times it can be agonizing. Like it's like pulling teeth trying to get a sentence out. But I learned a long time ago that you got to take the good with the bad with the writing, and that even if it takes you 3 hours to write a page, it's still a page. And so
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Right. So, and can you talk about like you're super creative, imaginative, in sort of fantasy type writing, so or magical realism. How do you describe your writing?
Um, I guess the piece that I submitted for the contest, I would consider that to be magical writing, magical realism,
Hmm.
in the vein of like Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Oh, yes.
He's probably like my favorite writer of all time, and his novel 100 Years of Solitude is like my Bible. Uh,
Wow.
so I would consider that definitely, uh,
Uh-huh.
but more since that story, my writing's more branched into like fantasy or science fiction, but I still kind of I don't when I write a science fiction story or a fantasy story, I kind of put the characters development first.
Oh,
I
okay.
not traditional genre fiction,
Hmm.
or I guess you would call it literary, where I'm more focused on the interactions of the characters than you know some grand science idea or a fantastical setting, I guess. So I don't know
Hmm.
if that explains it.
I love that. I love that. I think it seems like you just really let your imagination run wild, which is awesome. It
That's
must.
it's I don't really have much control over. I'm always writing stories in my head, unfortunately.
Oh, does it help you escape from the reality of the world?
uh, I don't necessarily know if it helps me escape. It helps me kind of just deal with it
Hmm.
somewhat. It helps me like you know comprehend what's going on. Uh,
Hmm.
and when I write something that's more fantastical, like the story I wrote, it helps me like process something that has happened to me, because I shared the same sort of like difficulty that my character did. She had lost her brother, and she was trying to address the grief that she felt, and that was kind of what I was going for in my short story. So
Wow. In Blind Oasis?
yes.
Well, because the story, please go to twosisterswriting.com and go to Winning Authors Stories, and it's Blind Oasis by Anthony Johnson. Please read the story. It's so good and it has all these surprises. But basically, the girl has a piece of string in her head that is like endless for a time. And it's the symbolism is really deep. And then the ending now makes sense based on what you just said. It's like really profound. So, wow, that's fascinating. So, Anthony, do you write on a computer or on a notebook, or how do you write?
I'm predominantly write on a MacBook,
Hmm.
um, but I also carry around a notebook with me.
Hmm.
Like I just went on a trip to the San Juan Islands to do some like vacation research, and I did all of my note taking and writing there on in a notebook and the pen. But I mostly write on a computer.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then do you suffer from rewrite-itis where you like you write something and then you want to go back and make it perfect before you can write another word?
I used to have that problem. I really did, but I considered it sort of to be a bad habit, and I pretty forcefully broke it. And now I'm like, I have a strict first draft, second draft, third draft rule. I
Uh,
write it out completely, and then I take a little bit of time, and then I go back and do revisions and do another draft, and I go through numerous drafts. And I felt that's been helped me remain productive instead of just rewriting the same page over and over again. Which is it's a big problem a lot of people have. It
no.
takes a while to break it. So
I call it rewrite-itis. The
that's a very
problem is
tough description.
you'll
Sure.
never finish the book if you have the perfect chapter one, but nothing else. That's not a book. you
That's
know?
right. That's great advice. It really is.
So then also now, Anthony, what are you intending to do with your novel? Are you going to try and get published by the Big Five with a literary agent, or what's your plan?
I was hoping to query some literary agents this summer sometime.
Mhm.
I'm still in the editing process right now,
Mm.
but I was hoping to query some literary agents, and in the meantime, I'm about to submit a few short stories that I've written as well. So I'm hoping that all of that will help me in my endeavor this summer. So
Oh, okay, good. I love how forward thinking you are. That's awesome. Because writing is a long haul.
it definitely
It
is.
takes a long time to write a book. It takes a long time if you get an agent. Well, to find the right agent first, you have to have the right fit, somebody who really believes in you and represents your genre and has the right connections and is going to cheer you on even if you get rejections. And then, there could be edits with a new acquisitions editor might want edits, and then it could be a year or two before you're published. So it's takes delayed gratification, but
Definitely.
the daily act of flexing those writing muscles is just like heartbeat pretty much. So do you journal as well?
A little bit. I put a lot of use to my notepad on my iPhone.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll write notes and I'll come back and think, I don't even know what this means. You know, um,
Mhm.
I don't journal traditionally like most people journal though,
Mhm.
but I take a lot of notes.
Mhm.
I never really left college to be honest with you.
So, have you found that your MFA is applicable and valuable in your life as a writer?
Well, it definitely helped me get my current job. Um, Remarkably, a lot of people with MFAs are like, "Oh, you can't get a job with it." I got a job before I even finished in like writing copy. Um, but I feel my MFA has definitely helped me, not how I expected it to.
Mhm.
Um, I was kind of expecting like to be given lessons on, plot, characterization, structure and whatnot, but it was more. I feel like what is most helpful with my MFA program was the fact that they made me write so much, and it
Oh,
really
really?
helped me like overcome a lot of like bad habits that I had had,
Mhm.
and it when with my master's thesis, it was like this massive document, and it helped me like really say I wrote all of this, and I'm able to replicate that same accomplishment. So
What's the topic?
oh, that was mostly it was a collection of short stories, some of which were not fit for print. But the Blind Oasis is in there, so
Okay.
that,
Well,
that,
that's
that's the best of the bunch.
spectacular.
Yeah. So,
So, to the aspiring writer out there who's contemplating an MFA program right now, especially during the pandemic, would you recommend it?
I don't think it's absolutely necessary to get things published. I think the best way to get published is just write and write and write and put yourself out there. Uh,
Mhm.
but I think in my case, it was definitely helpful. And I'm hoping it'll continue to be helpful as I seek out a literary agent in the future. And
Mhm.
it's always nice to put on your resume or to like mention that in your biography when you submit a short story,
Yeah,
give some credence. So
right.
I would recommend it if you think that it would help your writing for sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a beautiful credential. I mean, it sounds so fancy. Masters of Fine Arts.
It's better than the regular masters.
Very cool. Do you write any other genres like poetry?
I've written a lot of bad poetry in the past.
You call it bad poetry?
Definitely bad poetry. The bulk of it probably romantic poetry, which is even worse. Um,
Inspired by somebody?
a couple of people, unfortunately. Uh, but I'm not one for brevity, I guess. I'm more long form. I
Mm.
feel more comfortable writing novels than anything.
Uh-huh.
I struggle writing short stories because if there's a real art to writing this really self-contained
Uh-huh.
3,000, 6,000 word piece. So just
Uh-huh.
mostly short stories and novels right now. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Wow. Wow. Okay. So, what's your biggest challenge with writing? Is it like writing dialogue or setting the scene or pacing or what is it?
uh, maybe maybe setting the scene a little bit, the minute details. I always typically leave those for like the second draft. I'm a real first time through is like kind of write the bones of the story, and then I come through kind of like, I guess like sculpting would be a good comparison, where you just
Uh-huh.
do the rough form and then you get in there and like get the
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
details. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I wish I was
So
better.
when you
I wish I could do that the very first draft and then come back and cut things out, but I don't really
right,
work with that, unfortunately.
right. When you're writing, are you cognizant of the reader or are you just writing what Anthony wants to write?
I think I am cognizant of the reader, um, uh, especially for how I write. Like I write the bare bones, and then I add the details as I go along. I guess like when I write the first draft of something, I'm more cognizant of what the reader sees and feels and thinks, and then when I
Mhm.
go back and add more detail, it's more about what I want to see on the page. It's more of what I've envisioned, you know, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. Because if you're too consumed by well, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to the reader. And I know that readers have said when they feel like the author is talking to them, they love it,
Yeah,
so they connect, they feel engaged. But then sometimes I worry if I'm being authentic to myself, if I'm more like catering to them. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you have to walk that fine line between what's my pure story, but I have to be aware of who's going to read it. So
The stuff I write is so weird. It's kind of it's hard to imagine.
when I started reading your story, and then I was like, oh, that's right. This is magical realism because it's like, oh, at first I thought there was like some kind of worm or parasite or something in her head, but then it's string. But it was really cool. And then it just evolved in the witch doctor and all that stuff. I loved it because it takes you away from the normal reality that we're all facing every day, you know?
Definitely. I'm glad you
That's
enjoyed.
the joy. Thank you. Thanks. So, when you're writing, does it just like totally flow out in order, or do you like write chunks here and chunks there that aren't in order?
It usually flows in order. I typically don't just sit down and write something. I kind of think about it for like days or even weeks in advance. Um, I joke with my siblings that I never suffer from insomnia because I just think about what I'm going to write next, and then it puts me to sleep. I'll just like run the plot through in my head. Uh,
Uh-huh.
it can be frustrating when I get good ideas, so I'm constantly getting up and taking notes and going back down.
Uh-huh.
But I always think everything out before I write it a little bit, and
Mhm.
then I'll start to write it. And I always leave room to like kind of let my creativity fill in blanks or take a different route. I
Mhm.
never get really married to my outlines.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there is flow and there isn't.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a controlled flow, I guess.
Mhm. So do you outline short stories and your novel?
I do. Not
Oh,
as
good.
rigorously with short stories as I do my novel, but I definitely think out my short stories before I write them. So
Mhm. So, what's your outlining process? Is it like really detailed, or is it just broad strokes, or what?
mostly broad strokes. I'll
Hmm.
just try to figure out where I want to send my characters next, or um, like what hurdles I want them to face. The only thing I don't really like outline is the ending. I always try to just let the endings come naturally. Yeah. I've had problems in the past where I've tried to force an ending and it kind of just felt like it was hamstrung on there. So
Uh, so, is this like the first in a series, or what's your big picture goal?
yeah, it's definitely it would be a series. I've kind of thought about like sequels and whatnot, but I don't like to put the cart before the horse too much. Like, that's why I haven't thought too much about getting the novel published yet, because I've been focused on just getting it written. Because if you don't have pages, then you just have like, dreams and fantasies
Right.
for pages.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But yeah, it would definitely be a series if I get the first one published.
Oh, that's
I have
awesome.
several others I would like to write.
Uh-huh. So when did you decide you wanted to be a writer? Were you a kid? Were you a teenager? College? What?
When I was a kid, I
Uh-huh.
decided to be a writer. I was about 8 or 9, I think, and I started writing some pretty cheesy stories. And I still remember one where it was like, the animals, like deer, turned on humans and started hunting humans, because I was against
Ooh.
animal cruelty. I still am.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this really cheesy scene of like two hunters, and like one of them gets shot, and the deer steps out with a gun. Only a 9-year-old would write.
Love that. Do you still have it?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh, that would be a great story.
It's pretty funny. I like that.
That's awesome. And so when you envisioned yourself when you were a kid, envisioning yourself as a writer, as a grown-up, what did that look like?
Just being able to write as a day job. It's
Uh-huh.
probably the same thing I envision now, is just being able to like wake up every day and write for a few hours and then do research, for the rest of the day. That's
Uh-huh.
my dream job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not much to ask out of life, but that's my big goal. So
It's definitely attainable, and you definitely have the talent to make it happen. I hope you get an awesome book deal for like a series.
yeah,
That
hopefully
can
2021 is better than 2020.
Yes, yes. And I think people want to escape through reading and reading fantastical things. So I think luck is on your side in that regard.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's your favorite thing about writing?
Just creating new worlds. It's like, I don't know if it's just my brain is built that way, but I just have that creative itch where, like, even when I have had years where I didn't have time to write, or I just fell away from writing, I was still just catching myself like creating stories in my head. So it's just, that's always been my passion. So
Hmm. Do you agree with the statement that writers never retire?
yeah, and I think you could even add it to like, the other statement about, writing is never finished, it's just stopped. Writers don't,
Yes, yes,
like,
yes.
that's why I try not to go back and read my older stories, because I know
Right,
I want to like tinker with them.
right, right. Tinker. So do you love verbs? Because that was a great verb, but like just get excited about all the choices you can have with a verb.
Yeah, I live in a thesaurus. Like, I'm constantly like using a thesaurus. So,
Do you use the physical one or the online version?
thefreedictionary.com is my favorite. But if I had to like put myself on a thesaurus or dictionary team, I'm definitely an Oxford Dictionary guy. It's just, they have the best definitions, and the best thesaurus. So
Uh-huh. Do you have any pet peeves about writing?
but it doesn't come as easily as I wish. Start and stop, and it can be very frustrating. And I think a lot of people, unlike painting or making music, you know it's sometimes hard to like get pleasure out of it, and to see the beauty in it, because it's requires so much work and editing, and so I wish more people like experience the same pleasure that they do with like playing a piano, or like painting a scenic pasture or something. But it's a very frustrating like art and craft, and that's probably what I find most frustrating about it, is how frustrating it is.
So does that mean like you have really high standards for yourself, and so you might get frustrated that it's not good enough? Is that the feeling?
I think I never really realized, I have friends that write and they haven't had as much success as I've had. Um, and I think that what a lot of people miss about like just writing a short story, for example, is that you write the first draft and people kind of like feel it's inadequate and they give up there, or they move on to another project, or they do the rewrites, um, and it's not until you really get to the third, fourth, or even the fifth draft that you really see like the beauty of the work. And I think it's a lot of people don't really get to that point, if
Mm.
they, because that's what's frustrating about it, is you got to really spend a lot of time shaping it and whittling it down, so
Yeah, it takes so much discipline to be a writer and perseverance and dedication, and it's so easy to not do it.
yep, it's easy to
For it's but the feeling, that gnawing feeling of not doing it even over years is so awful. That's motivation to do it.
definitely. I couldn't think of doing any other craft, like picking up an instrument or learning how to paint. That's Writing is the art for me. So
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's just it's like it is really good for mental health too. And another thing about writing is it's forever, you know? Like your books, your writing can be around forever for people to read generations, centuries from now. That
and
is,
that's the goal, I feel, for anyone who takes their writing seriously, is to just have that sort of impact to where
mhm,
100 years from now someone's still reading their work and being inspired by it.
mhm, mhm. Awesome. So, what else, Anthony? What's your greatest dream? Like, would you like to see your sequel of your series of novels be made into movies, or what's your greatest dream?
That would um, be incredible if I were to be that lucky to have something like that. But I guess my greatest dream is just to like go into a bookstore and see my book on the shelf. It's just it's not the millions of dollars or the Nobel Prize in literature or anything like that. It's just to see my book on a bookshelf
I
would.
love that idea. Yes. So I had that vision, like literally a vision when I was writing my first novel, and then it happened. But it started with the vision and I held tight and I focused on it every day. And then I literally walked into Borders bookstore and it was on the new releases table. And then it was even better because my son went over and picked it up off the table. And when I had the vision, I didn't know I would be a mom. So it was even better vision than I had, imagined. So that does
I,
happen.
yeah, I hope to share that same experience one day. See my book at a bookstore. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
that would be it.
Awesome. I want an invitation to your book party when it happens, okay? Even if it's virtual.
Definitely,
Okay,
no
very
doubt.
cool. So what's your advice to writers out there, especially those who have a day job and want to get some writing done during the pandemic? What's your advice?
Don't waste your weekends. Like, even if you have, you want to go hiking or you want to go see a movie, wake up like you did early in the morning and just take 2 hours and get some pages done. Like, once you have like pages to like holding your hand, like that's your accomplishment, and you can just build from that. And then 2 pages becomes 10, becomes 50, becomes 100, and then next thing you know, you're working on your second novel. So
I love that advice. Thank you. That's awesome. I have chills from that. Wow. Wow. Don't waste your weekends.
don't waste your weekend.
Awesome. That is really powerful. Anthony Johnson, MFA, University of Washington, live from Seattle right now. Just finished first novel, short story contest winner, published in our first anthology of international writers. It has been an absolute delight to talk with you tonight on Writer Talks.
Likewise, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So let's all, anybody who's watching, let's wish Anthony Johnson the best of luck to get an awesome book deal and a film deal.
Eventually, one of these days.
All right, Anthony, I wish you the absolute best. Please keep in touch and let us know when you get your book deal, okay?
I will for sure. Thank you again for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for watching Writer Talks, where you get to meet the authors of Two Sisters Writing and Publishing, who are published in our International Anthology of Short Story Writers because they won our monthly contest. And if you want to enter our contest, please go to twosisterswriting.com. And you could be here just like Anthony with a winning story, being celebrated and talking about the writer's life. We will see you next time. And meanwhile, happy reading and happy writing.